Macionerie. Che cosa vuoi?
Lui, scomparso nel luglio 1955.
Voglio solo sapere se sta accadendo realmente.
Welcome to Unknown, where we explore the bizarre, the mysterious, and sometimes unsettling. And today, we're going to do a deep dive into one of the most interesting and infamous stories in Arizona history with our special guest, Travis Walton. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Walton, it's a pleasure to have you. Now, we want to go back to 1975, so 50 years last month. You were taken from where you were in the forest and came back almost a week later with a tale, which was truly extraordinary. Now, if you could explain to us, just you were part of a logging crew.
Yeah, there were 7 of us.
Mm-hmm. So just another night going in that forest. Can you tell us about what brought you out there and what you saw?
We'd been putting in long days, needed to finish the contract. It was almost completely done, but few more long days and we'd have it all done. And as we were headed home, we saw this glow coming through the trees. And at first I thought, no big deal. We knew it was deer hunting season. Could hear shots in the distance during the day. I thought maybe hunters camped up there on the hill or something. And when we got through the trees where we could see the source of the light, we saw this craft hovering there. And it was so shocking. All of us at once were just, I didn't say it's a UFO. Somebody else on the crew said that, but I thought it was going to take off. Just as soon as we came into view, that it'd just be gone. So that was the reason I jumped out and headed towards it, thinking just get a closer look before it gets away.
Describe it for us best you can. What did it look like?
Well, it was a glowy metallic disc. And one thing was kind of distracting from studying the appearance of it was the glow, the way it shone on the brush and the trees and the ground, the way everything had a real strange look to it. Plus, the sounds it was making was completely off the range of human hearing on the high end and the low end. Very hard to describe, but a very pulsing and high frequency sound too.
So you get out of the truck and you're walking towards this craft. What your other crew that's there with you in the truck, what are they doing at the time as they're seeing you get out?
They're saying crazy SOP. I mean, excuse my language, but they were saying, come back, get away from there. And that would have been the smart thing to do.
Just half walked, half ran it to about here, and started to be a little more cautious right here, and I slowed down to a walk, and it was kind of cold. I put my hands in my pockets, and suddenly the sound got a whole lot louder, and it started to move. And so I jumped down behind this log right here, which was up higher, and I jumped down like this, and I raised up, and I turned to go, and I just felt a numbing shock.
I didn't see what hit me. I just felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But the crew said this blast of energy came out of the craft, threw me through the air. And they said they were yelling to each other, get us out of here, he's dead, he's dead. And they were all convinced it had killed me because the way my body landed like a wet rag, it was just completely limp.
Wow, so you were out of it at that point. What do you remember next?
I just woke up. I thought I was in a hospital. I dimly remembered encountering the craft, but I thought, well, they must have taken me to the hospital. So I couldn't focus very clearly. I was in a lot of pain, head and chest area. And I could see these forms around me. I couldn't quite make out, but it seemed to me like they were doctors, maybe they're wearing surgical caps and gowns where only their eyes were exposed. But when I could clear my vision better, I could see that these weren't doctors, that these were these creatures that were looking at me.
What's your first thought when you realize that these are not human beings that you're looking at?
Well, that was the total impression that I have of the whole experience at that time, is that these are horrible monsters, and this pain that I'm feeling is being inflicted by them. It was only later that I realized that perhaps I had misunderstood. I was screaming all kinds of questions at them, getting no response whatsoever. But one thing I've heard in other reports is their expressionlessness. And humans have a tendency to, when we see that in other people, to interpret that as hostility. But if they're telepathic, they don't need smiles or frowns or any sorts of things. Their communication with each other is probably much richer than ours is with vocal communication. But I think probably because of the injury hitting me in the head and chest, that it somehow interfered with any kind of telepathic reassurance, if that's what they were wanting to do.
It must have been terrifying. I mean, did you get the sense, did you try to get away somehow? Were you strapped down?
I jumped up this thing they had over my chest. I was feeling a lot of pain in my chest. Are they doing this to me? No, they were fixing something that I had caused by sort of very negligently getting too close and becoming injured. But at that time, I attributed all the pain, and I felt like I was dying. I felt it was because of them. But over the years, it took me to figure out that that doesn't fit in with everything else that happened, that they returned me at all. I mean, they could have dumped my body somewhere and never said a word, and then the crew would have been hung for murder, and that'd been the end of it if total secrecy was all was their top priority. Mm. But I think that these beings are probably capable of everything they're doing here and remaining completely undetected. I think the sightings and experiences people have on the fringes, on the outer limits of what's accepted, is intentional.
Really?
I think it's having the purpose, whether they mean to or not. I think, in my view, probably the reason for it is to get us used to the idea. We're not the end-all, be-all. And I think we'd behave a lot better towards each other if we acknowledge the fact that there's always greater and lesser intelligences than us, and they're getting along just fine, so why can't we? At any one time, we've got over 100 wars going on, and there's no reason for that.
Mm. So you're in the craft. You're having this experience where you feel like they are repairing your injuries with what's happening. What are the next moments that you remember?
Well, I was felt I was under attack, and I was grabbed up an instrument. I didn't study it all. I was just grabbing something I could fight them with, and I was lashing out at them, and they just turned and left the room. No sound, no explanation, no nothing. So I went looking for a way out and encountered a human-looking being who took me out of the craft. And I thought, well, this was a rescue, maybe some U.S. military or something of that nature. But do
you remember what he looked like?
Well, he was tall and muscular, had a tight-fitting blue uniform, no insignia, but he had a helmet over his head. And I figured that maybe the reason he wasn't answering me is because he couldn't hear with that on. But he looked human. That was much more reassuring to me. So when he took me by the arm and led me out of there, I was only too happy to go.
I bet. And did you get any sense of what the other beings looked like, or how big they were, or any other features?
Well, they were small and huge heads and very large eyes. But, when I was lying on my back, they were still above me and in a very weakened condition. So I was terrified. But, I've heard other descriptions of these types of beings, being small, hairless, huge cranium. yeah, that occupied my nightmares for a while.
Is it hard to talk about to this day?
Yeah, it is. I don't go there willingly. It's not something I live day to day around home. I've got a big family, and that's my primary interest and activity.
Can I ask you real quick too, as you were walking through the story and you were describing where even incidents today were just the human ability to even talk about these things, to put them into words. How is that, with describing these moments? Does it feel like we even have the capacity to explain to another person, here's what I saw and here are the details?
Yeah, I've made a lot of adjustments. At the time I was, sort of trying to pleading with people, believe me, I'm telling you what happened. There was a lot of doubt. People, unfortunately, they believe what they prefer to believe. And I've come to kind of a philosophy about that, that it all comes down to facts and reasoning. Are your facts true and accurate, complete, and is your reasoning valid? Any sort of emotional reaction you want to have to that has no business affecting the outcome of your judgment. Let's find out what happened. That's what's important. I'm not saying feelings and emotion are irrelevant. They're just a part of deciding what's real and what isn't.
Do you ever remember any part of how you actually got out of there and got back to safety?
I woke up after they rendered me unconscious. Looked like some kind of a gas mask sort of thing. But when I woke up, I was on a little hill overlooking the town of Heber, the town nearest where this happened. It's probably the only place they could have dropped me where they could remain undetected, but yet I could see where help was and go to it.
And so those moments of you're seeing Heber, and then of course you woke up and you're back on the ground, back on Earth.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Ran down into the town, pounding on doors. There was one building with lights on, smoke coming out of the chimney, but nobody came out.
And of course, we had talked about your experience being taken onto a craft, and then 5 days later, you're back in Arizona. Can you tell us real quick that moment of, like you said, getting off the craft and then trying to go find help?
I ran down, found a telephone booth, and made a phone call. I just must have passed out. I didn't wake up until my brother picked me up and put me in the truck. But he was talking about how concerned my mother was, and something in the exchange there made him say, "Travis, feel your face." And I felt, and I had a 5-day growth of beard. He says, "You've been missing for 5 days." And that was an additional shock for me because I had no idea. I only had a conscious period of, just a matter of minutes or less than an hour.
I was just going to ask. So that 5 days felt like an hour.
Yeah.
Basically. Wow.
So I was unconscious. And I don't know where that conscious period was, immediately after being struck or later in the period or towards the end of it. I don't know.
And you felt like at some point they were trying to heal you. At that point, did you feel better physically?
Well, I came to that realization later. I was very anxious about the after effects, had a variety of medical tests, concerned about, I threw myself into work to kind of shut out the memory. So I, worked overtime every day, took all the days off that I could, working those days. And yet never called in sick one time in all those years afterwards.
Well, one of this, of course, your brother that picked you up, this is Dwayne, right?
Yes.
Who did. Now, of course, here at Fox 10 before, in the early 90s, we were, previous to that, Cool TV, which was the station here for Channel 10 in Phoenix. Now, 5 days, the same day that the press conference was called on November 11th, 1975, our Cool TV team was there and spoke to your brother about your arrival back in Arizona and what happened. And we actually have that clip, which hasn't been broadcast in 50 years, if we can take a look.
He was on a craft of some sort, and he had contact with beings of two different kinds or two different types of people, and they were very much like people.
But they could converse with him?
And they didn't make any speech, no contact, either physical or mental. They didn't, no conversation whatsoever.
So, Travis, when you watch your brother there, what are your feelings seeing that 50 years ago?
Gratitude. I think he really saved my life with his protectiveness. He was a very strong person. He was a amateur boxer, a bull rider, and he wasn't going to be pushed around. And he took me to where I could get help, psychiatrists, medical help in the valley that I wouldn't have got had the local authorities gotten a hold of me.
Can I ask you a little bit more about that, sir? And just what did it haunt you for years to come, or how did you deal with it?
It was definitely something that dominated my nightmares and whatnot. And at the time, since I was interpreting this in terms of attacked by horrible monsters, it was worse then. It was only over time that I gradually realized that if they meant harm, they didn't have to return me at all.
If we could go back to that week, of course, where you're missing for those 5 days. And at the time, of course, the Navajo County Sheriff's Office has launched a search to look for you. Even that night, correct, that part of the other crew, they were going out with the sheriff to look for you at the site in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. But they had suspected, correct, that possibly you had met a foul end, that maybe you had been murdered by the crew.
And, it wasn't a harmonious group, One of the guys I'd had a fight with that morning before work, It was just some minor teasing about a girl that I was dating, that he went and told her stuff to try to get her to come over to him. But, it was just, it was a kind of a fight that ended when Mike came out and said, "All right, guys, knock it off. Let's get to work." And but one of the guys had only been on the crew for 3 days, so it wasn't a tightly knit group of buddies all sticking to their story or something, as some people tried to put it. But everyone stuck by what they had seen throughout their lives.
And we should bring up the point about the lie detector test that you all passed.
Yes, every one of us passed multiple lie detector tests. I've taken and passed 5 different tests from various law enforcement agencies, people who test, the CIA, FBI, and that, and people who are skeptical about polygraph aren't very well educated. This is the technique that these agencies use to screen their own people when they're hiring.
And actually, if we could, the press conference that was held that day with Arizona Department of Public Safety, where their state polygrapher came out and talked to the media about you were telling the truth about what you saw. Your crew all had the same story, and here are the results. But we have that clip, if we can watch that right now.
They did, in fact, see something which they believed to be a UFO, and that is strictly what the polygraph proved, that they did, in fact, see something. It does not determine that there was, in fact, a UFO. It determines strictly that they did see something which they believed to be a UFO.
Gilson said 5 of the 6 tests showed conclusively that the men were telling the truth. The 6th was inconclusive. For Channel 10, Chuck Diamond, Cool News.
I'm a little bit annoyed by that one statement. 1 was inconclusive.
Yeah.
The guy I had a fight with.
Of course it was him.
Interrupted his test. He thought he was going to be the one that got hung for murder. So he interrupted the test.
And this is the gentleman right in the film adaptation of Fire in the Sky, who they showed was cutting that tree and looked like he was trying to hit you with it. That happened, right?
He did that. That really happened. But, he was angry that he thought he was going to be the one there pointing the finger at that time. The suspicion was murder. But it wasn't really inconclusive in any nature of the test. All of these tests were repeated 3 identical runs through the question. He jumped up, pulled off his sensors, and left after 2 complete runs.
Okay.
He did pass those 2 complete runs, and then he came back later with Cy Gilson and took a full test, which he passed. So the bottom line on him was he passed, not that it was inconclusive.
Important clarification for sure.
Now, can you walk us through just the moments of you're going to talk to the authorities? They have been looking for you. They thought you admit a bad end where possibly you were murdered, and you have this incredible story and you're talking to them. What's the feeling that you have as you're talking to them about this, where like I'm sure it can only be disbelief that they have on their faces.
Well, imagine the mixed feelings that they had. One of them describes walking down the street and having people yell out, "Murderer!" That kind of stuff. Great amount of pressure. And some of my family members were exerting that kind of pressure against the men, on the suspicion that maybe they had killed me. And it was a mixture for me, because then all of a sudden, it wasn't murder. It was, are you crazy, a liar? People love to say, they'd love to drum up old incidents or something that fulfills their wish fulfillment, that it was something that was just made up. But it was definitely what happened, and it was very hard to cope with. The only thing that I've changed over the years is my interpretation of it. Was it just a vicious attack and all this pain I was experiencing was just torment? But no, I think I did something unexpected, foolish, got myself injured, and that they actually saved my life.
Well, that must help ease some of your memories a little bit too, right? Was there a turning point, maybe psychologically more than anything, where you felt like you can cope with this and go on and have a normal life?
Yeah, and some of that residual fear and pain happened later when I was with my son and a girlfriend, and we encountered a huge object, and he says, "Dad, should we pull over and take a picture?" I said, "No." And I'm so disappointed in myself. It was so grand, it was so unmistakable. And the only reason I even talk about that, because I don't talk about anything I can't prove, was that there was a group who were gathering reports, and there was like 15 other people who saw what we saw, described it the way we saw it, and didn't know each other. Right. So it was huge, and flew from a great distance to us at an extremely high rate of speed, stopped right over the top of us, and it's hard to imagine that's just a coincidence. They didn't speak to me or say hi.
They were checking up on you.
Yeah, but it does seem unlikely that it was an accident, that they, in a city the size of Burbank, that they would stop right over the top of us and then proceed at a different angle from that point.
Did you ever get any kind of feeling of why they did what they did? Any resolve there?
Yeah, I kind of figured out something later, that perhaps it's a theory that perhaps they were looking for something that's formed when lightning strikes the earth. It's a rare mineral formation that you can't get any other way. But it's called fulgurite. When I first heard about this, I looked it up. And there's these really strange crystals that are formed when these millions of volts hit the ground. And I learned that the part of the Mogollon Rim there has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of any place in the United States outside of the Everglades. The Everglades has a higher lightning strike frequency, but that's pretty high.
So there's something to it.
It's just a theory, but
yeah.
What else would they be doing there? Certainly, I don't think it makes sense that they were there to capture some foolish logger running at them.
Yeah. It's not like they're reverse snowbirds or anything, right? That are just hanging out in northern Arizona.
Well, absolutely. 50 years ago last month, and again, as we've already discussed, our predecessor at Fox 10 was Cool TV. And 50 years ago, as this story was happening, we had a crew there talking first. We already played the clip with your brother, Dwayne. And then, of course, the state also talking about some of the results with the
they were
test.
very fair, too. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, one of the parts was 6 months later, you sat down with one of our reporters at the time to tell your story. And listening to it, it's incredible just how the story has not changed in those 50 years. But we have that, if we can play that clip right now.
Most Arizonans are quite familiar with Travis Walton's story. After sighting the UFO, he approached it and claimed he was taken on board. The 6 men with him all passed lie detector examinations regarding the incident. Travis has undergone all sorts of testing and has stuck to his story.
I couldn't focus my eyes very well, but I looked beyond the top edge of the thing that was laying across me, and I saw 2 men leaning over me. They weren't really men. They were a lot like they were a lot like men, but they weren't quite human.
Mr. Walton, I couldn't help notice you there. It is struck by you almost struggling to get that story out. It must have been still emotional at that time.
It was very difficult to talk about, yes. What really helped was the hypnosis that I underwent from Dr. James Harder. He put me in, I hadn't even been able to tell what happened, not even my brother, until that hypnosis. And the technique was to have me describe what happened as a spectator rather than as the person experiencing it. And that really helped a lot. From that moment on, I was at least able to describe what happened. I've come to a different position about these beings and their purpose here. You know, initially it was the boogeyman. It was something to terrify people. And I wasn't retelling the story in order to scare people. As time went on, my willingness to talk about it was to put the event in perspective. That it's inevitable that in a universe so vast, literally millions of galaxies, not just millions of stars, millions of galaxies. You look out there and you see the Milky Way, that's one galaxy, our galaxy. But so many of those points of light are entire galaxies. They point the most advanced telescope we have at the most empty spot in the sky, and they see more galaxies of age far, far millions of years beyond what human beings have been around for. So it's absurd to think the naysayers are actually advocating that humans are the only life in the universe. And it's inevitable that there's other life. As a matter of fact, astronomers have even increased. There's something called the Drake equation. It's the number of planets out there. They've increased that because they say virtually every star has about a dozen planets. So it's the ones that are not too close to the star, getting too hot or too far out, they're too cold. The ones in the middle range, there's going to be a considerable percentage of those that have support life. And how much older than us or younger? I mean, there's probably cave aliens out there, but those are not the ones that are coming here.
And it's been said that you'd have to think we're pretty arrogant to think we're the only living things in the entire universe. Yeah.
And we need to get comfortable with that in order to give ourselves a perspective about the factors that make us make war on each other.
As you've been living your life and what you've seen through the decades, do you feel as if now there is a push to search for these answers, where people are seeing things? We obviously have our phones. Everybody has a phone in a pocket, a camera to document some of these things as they're witnessing them. But do you feel that the present moment is more receptive to a story like yours compared to 50 years ago?
I do. I think the reaction is much better, and even conventional news outlets, forgo the little chuckle at the end, because, I don't believe that all reports are sightings of alien beings from other worlds. I think to a very large extent, people misidentify things, but there's a solid core of events that are definitely glimpses of life from other worlds. When I'm asked to say which cases that are reported do I support, I'm not going to go there. Mm-hmm. I resented my case being judged by people who didn't have the facts, who didn't know the details. And since I can't research all these cases, it would be irresponsible of me to point out which ones are good, solid information, things that really happened, and other things that are, mistaken identification in many cases.
Can I ask about your decision to stay in the Snowflake area? I think if it was me, I might have been long gone for many reasons.
Well, I thought about just clamming up and not talking about it all, but that's not going to work. It's stuck to me like glue. So I can take on the role of being, that nutcase over there, or go ahead and fight the fight and, push back against that. What happened. It was real. If you had 7 people say they witnessed a murder and testify to that, open and shut case.
There are some people in this town who don't believe your story.
Yeah, but they don't tell me that to my face.
How do you respond to them?
I want to be believed because that is my reputation, and it is people's attitudes toward me through my life. When he was hit by the beam, we took off and went up the road here.
That's the question. Why'd you leave?
I think if you'd have been here, you would know that. We left because it was such a thing to happen, I don't know how to explain it. It was just very frightening, and seeing Travis get knocked down like that was by something that we'd never seen before, and I guess you just say fear of the unknown.
That, once again, is the story. Whether you believe it or not is your business. What they saw in this clearing was to them a UFO. Jim Ryerson, Cool News 10, in the Sitgreaves National Forest.
As you watch that clip with that young man 50 years ago telling that story, is there anything you wish you could tell him that if he was listening to be able to hear it for now?
Well, yeah, definitely. The things I've discovered and described to you, that helps me to understand that what happened wasn't a representation of the pain and fear that I was feeling, that was incidental to some foolishly risky acts on my part.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, did you get a lot of attention from government officials on this afterward? What did they want to know?
I think they knew it happened. They have satellites. They probably observed the whole thing, and they had nothing to say, because the original position of the government was, no, there's no such thing. But that wasn't gaining them any credibility. It was losing them credibility. So they decided, okay, we're going to concede. We're going to show gun-camera footage of these craft and say, okay, there's something out there of great technology that we don't know what it is, but we're not going beyond that. So they kind of went to a middle ground, but that was released late on a Friday, slow new day. By Monday, everybody was saying, so what else is new? So it didn't get much attention like you would think to actually release military gun camera footage. So they did the same stunt. Later, same footage was revealed, and they say, we're finally coming clean that there's something there. Again, the same reaction from the public, like, so what else is new? We know there's something out there. But they advanced to a position that's more credible without having to say, we're going to open the files for you. I don't recommend that the government open their files. They have good reason to keep that stuff under wraps. If there's recovered technology, certainly we have countries on this planet that also have technology. And it would not be helpful for government to give into demands to throw open the files and show everybody what we have, because our enemies are not going to show us what they have. So it kind of forms a safety shield, not knowing if we've recovered something that is the trump card. Forgive me. No, the power-based. You don't know what we have. We don't know what you have. So let's just be at peace.
Interesting take. Yeah.
50 years from this incident, as you were in this part of your life, do you feel like you will see them again or meet them again in this life or the next?
Yeah, I do think that. I used to think I had what was called the anthill theory. You walk by an anthill, and how absurd it would be to say, I think I'll stop and have a conversation with that ant right there. You know, we just wouldn't do that. It'd be silly. But I've outgrown that. I think not only are they capable of having a conversation with a human, but if you saw one when you were young and you see one as an adult, they know it's you.
Yeah.
You'd say, well, how could they possibly keep track of those millions of points of data? Well, the United States government has something called the Utah Data Center. Acres and acres of computers consuming millions of gallons of water just to cool them, recording every electronic transmission on the face of the earth. Look it up, check it for yourself. But yet, if humans can handle that much data, certainly the aliens can be what they call respecter of persons as far as identifying individuals. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Mr. Walton, we appreciate you coming in.
Absolute pleasure, sir.
Good talking with you.